The morning after Rachel's surgery was supposed to be uneventful. I expected her to be groggy from the anesthesia and focused on her recovery. I tiptoed around the hospital room, preparing her favorite tea and checking her vitals. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor was a soothing backdrop as I arranged the small bouquet of flowers I had brought. Rachel stirred as I settled into the chair beside her bed. Her eyes fluttered open, still clouded from the sedatives. I smiled softly, hoping to reassure her. "Hey, how are you feeling?" She blinked slowly, her gaze locking onto mine with a mix of confusion and vulnerability. I don't know if I should be talking right now," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's okay. You're safe," I replied gently. "If there's anything you need to tell me, you can." Rachel hesitated, her eyes drifting away from me. "I don't know if I'm ready. But, there's something you need to know." My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, wincing as she shifted in bed. "It's about Ryan." The name struck me like a bolt of lightning. Ryan had been a friend and a colleague, someone I trusted. "What about him?" Rachel's voice cracked as she continued. "I've been seeing him. 4 months now. It started as a fling, but it grew. I didn't know how to stop it. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. "Rachel, what are you talking about? How could you do this?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen. It was a mistake, but it kept happening. I'm so sorry." The words hit me like a freight train. I struggled to keep my composure. "Do you realize what you've done? How this will affect everything?" "I know," she sobbed, her voice trembling. "I should have told you earlier. I thought I could fix it. But now, it's too late." I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking. "I need to record this," I said, trying to sound calm. "For my own sanity, if nothing else." Rachel nodded, her shoulders slumping as she began to recount the affair in more detail. "We met in secret, there were texts, late-night calls. I thought I could handle it, but it became this huge, uncontrollable thing." I pressed record, her confessions pouring out in fragmented sentences. She spoke of rendezvous in hidden places, stolen moments, and the deceit that had slowly consumed her life. Each revelation felt like a dagger, twisting deeper with every word. As Rachel's voice trailed off and she fell into a restless sleep, I replayed the recording, trying to absorb the full impact of her betrayal. Her words were a painful confirmation of what I had suspected for weeks but hoped was just paranoia. I needed more evidence to confront both her and Ryan, to understand the full extent of their deception. I spent the rest of the morning gathering documents and photos that Rachel had unwittingly left behind, texts, pictures of them together, and various other pieces of their sordid affair. Each item I uncovered deepened my sense of betrayal and clarified the gravity of the situation. My mind raced with a mix of anger and sadness, and a cold resolve began to form. This was only the beginning of a very painful journey. The company gala was in full swing when I arrived, the room alight with chandeliers and the hum of idle chatter. It was meant to be an evening of celebration, but tonight, it was the stage for a confrontation I had long anticipated. I had prepared for this moment meticulously, armed with evidence and a heavy heart. As I moved through the crowd, I noticed the familiar faces of colleagues and friends, their smiles oblivious to the storm about to hit. I caught sight of Rachel and Ryan, who were deep in conversation across the room. Rachel looked radiant in a blue evening gown, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Ryan, ever the charming figure, was playing the role of the attentive colleague. I approached the podium, where the evening's host was wrapping up a speech. "Excuse me," I said, interrupting politely but firmly. "I need to make an announcement." The host gave me a curious glance but nodded. "Go ahead." I took a deep breath, trying to steady the nerves that threatened to betray me. "Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for a moment." A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd as they turned their focus toward me. I tapped a button on my phone, and the room fell silent as Rachel's voice began to fill the space, crackling through the speakers. "I'm sorry. I've been seeing Ryan for months. It started as something small but quickly became a mess, Rachel's voice echoed, her confession raw and unfiltered. Shock rippled through the crowd. Faces turned toward Rachel and Ryan, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and horror. I watched as Rachel's face flushed with mortification, her hand flying to her mouth. Ryan, on the other hand, looked momentarily stunned, then his expression hardened into a defensive scowl. "What the hell is this?" he shouted, stepping toward me. Ignoring him, I switched to the screen displaying photos and messages, images of Rachel and Ryan together in intimate settings, and texts that left nothing to the imagination. The room erupted into a cacophony of gasps, whispers, and outraged exclamations. Rachel's voice rose above the chaos. "Please, stop. This isn't necessary," she pleaded, but her protests were drowned out by the uproar. A colleague named Laura approached, her eyes wide with concern. "What is going on? Is this real?" I nodded, trying to remain composed. "It's all true. Rachel and Ryan have been involved in a lengthy affair, and this is the evidence." Ryan stormed up to me, his face red with anger. "You have no right to do this. This is a private matter." I met his gaze steadily. "You made it public when you chose to betray trust. You both need to face the consequences." The scene became chaotic as people started gathering around, murmuring and exchanging shocked looks. I could see the strain on Rachel's face as she tried to hold back tears, while Ryan's attempts to deflect blame only fueled the turmoil. The host of the gala stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's clear that this evening has taken an unexpected turn. Please, let's remain respectful as we process this information." But the damage was done. The gala, meant to be a celebration, had turned into a public spectacle of betrayal and scandal. Rachel and Ryan's actions were exposed in a way they could never have anticipated, and their lives were now forever altered by the events of that night. As the crowd began to disperse, I felt a grim satisfaction. The truth was out, and though it was painful to witness, it was the only way to confront the deceit that had upended my life. The days following the gala were a whirlwind of chaos and retribution. The scandal had sent shockwaves through the company, and the fallout was swift and merciless. Rachel and Ryan were called into a meeting with the company's HR department early the next morning. I watched from a distance as they entered the building, their faces drawn and expressions tense. It was a far cry from the confident, polished personas they had presented the night before. By mid-afternoon, the company released a terse statement announcing their immediate termination. I received a slew of messages from former colleagues, all of whom were stunned by the revelations and the speed of the fallout. At home, I was flooded with calls and texts, each one more incredulous than the last. The evidence I had presented had not only ruined Rachel's and Ryan's professional lives but also ignited a public frenzy. I was left to navigate the aftermath, trying to piece together my own shattered life. One evening, I received a call from Kelly, Ryan's wife. Her voice was a mix of anger and sorrow. "I saw everything at the gala. I don't know what to say. I need to know everything. I need the truth." I took a deep breath. "Kelly, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I've gathered all the evidence, the texts, the photos, everything. I can share it with you, please." Kelly's voice cracked. "I need to understand why this happened. I need to know what's real." I met Kelly later that week and handed over a folder filled with the damning evidence. As she sifted through the documents, her expression hardened. "I never imagined Ryan could be this deceitful. I thought we had a good marriage." "It's often the people we trust the most who end up hurting us the deepest," I said quietly, empathizing with her pain. Meanwhile, Rachel's reaction to the fallout was one of defensive rage. We met to finalize the divorce, and the confrontation was anything but calm. She arrived at the lawyer's office, her eyes puffy from crying. "I can't believe you did this to me," Rachel spat as she sat down, her voice trembling with anger. "You aired all our dirty laundry for everyone to see. You betrayed me," Rachel, I replied, struggling to maintain my composure. I had no choice but to expose the truth. You brought this upon yourself. She glared at me, her face a mask of hurt and fury. You could have handled this privately. You didn't have to ruin everything. I tried to handle it privately, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions. But you and Ryan made that impossible with your actions. The legal proceedings were swift. Rachel and I finalized our divorce without much fanfare, though the emotional toll was significant. Rachel's reputation was in tatters, and she struggled to find new employment. Her once prominent career had been reduced to rubble. Ryan faced a similar fate. His professional life was destroyed, and his personal life was under intense scrutiny. The divorce from Kelly was equally swift, a painful reminder of the destruction left in the wake of his infidelity. In the end, the consequences of their actions were severe. Both Rachel and Ryan faced immediate termination from their jobs, a public disgrace that tainted their reputations, and the collapse of their personal lives. As for me, I was left to pick up the pieces and find a way forward amid the wreckage of my former life. Despite the pain and anger, there was a sense of closure. The betrayal had been exposed, and the fallout had been severe, but the truth was now out in the open. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was clear that rebuilding and moving on would be the only way forward. In the months that followed the public scandal, life began to stabilize. The whirlwind of emotions gradually settled into a steady rhythm, and I found myself facing a new chapter with cautious optimism. The process of rebuilding was slow but necessary. Work became a sanctuary for me. The office, once a place of shared professional camaraderie with Rachel and Ryan, now felt like a refuge. I threw myself into my projects, channeling my energy into tasks that needed my attention. It was therapeutic, providing a sense of purpose and normalcy amidst the upheaval. One day, as I worked late at the office, I received a call from Laura, a former colleague who had been supportive throughout the ordeal. "Hey, I've been meaning to check in on you," Laura said warmly. "How are you holding up?" I leaned back in my chair, sighing. "It's been tough, Laura. Some days are better than others. I'm focusing on work and trying to move forward." "I'm glad to hear that," Laura replied. "You deserve to find some peace after everything that's happened. If you ever need to talk or just hang out, let me know." "Thanks, Laura. I appreciate it," I said, feeling a genuine sense of gratitude for her support. As the weeks turned into months, I began to feel a cautious sense of renewal. I focused on self-care and personal growth, attending therapy sessions and engaging in activities that brought me joy. My social circle expanded as I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. It was during this period of rebuilding that I met Emily. Our initial interactions were casual, coffee dates, walks in the park, and shared laughter over simple things. She was kind, genuine, and refreshingly honest. With her, the weight of my past seemed to lift, if only slightly. One evening, as we sat at a cozy cafe, Emily took my hand and looked at me with a warm smile. "I've noticed how much you've been through. I just want you to know that I'm here for you." I smiled back, feeling a wave of relief. "Thank you, Emily. It means a lot to hear that. I'm still working through a lot, but your support makes it easier." "It's okay to take your time," she said softly. "We can go at your pace. Just know that you don't have to go through this alone." Her words were a balm to my wounded soul. Our relationship grew stronger, rooted in mutual respect and understanding. Emily's presence was a testament to the possibility of finding happiness again after the storm. One day, I ran into Kelly at a community event. Her demeanor had softened somewhat, though the pain of her past still lingered. She approached me with a tentative smile. "I wanted to thank you for everything you did. I know it wasn't easy for you either." I nodded, appreciating her sincerity. "I'm sorry for what you went through. It was a difficult situation all around." Kelly sighed, her eyes reflecting a mix of sadness and resolve. "It was. But I'm working on rebuilding my own life too. I guess we both are." As I looked back on the journey, I realized that the destruction wrought by Rachel and Ryan's actions had, in some ways, paved the way for personal growth. The betrayal had been a harsh lesson, but it had also led me to a place of greater self-awareness and strength. Rebuilding wasn't just about moving past the hurt, it was about transforming it into something positive. Emily and I continued to grow closer, and I found joy in the small moments of life. The scars of the past would always be there, but they no longer defined me. Instead, they were reminders of the resilience and capacity for renewal that we all possess. As I embraced the future, I did so with a renewed sense of hope. The journey from betrayal to healing had been arduous, but it had also been transformative. And with each step forward, I felt more confident that the path ahead held the promise of a brighter, more honest life.